A few years ago, I was an engineering student with some free time. I had been interested in trying out some high-speed flash photography for a while, and I decided to give it a try. In this video, I discuss the basic concepts behind high-speed flash photography, how I created a homemade flash trigger that automatically fires when sound is detected, and some of the results of these efforts. The exposure of a photograph is fundamentally a function of the amount of light that impacts the imaging sensor. The amount of light that the sensor is exposed to is a function of time. In most photographs, this exposure time is controlled by the amount of time that a physical or electronic shutter is open. Under this model, ambient light is being focused onto the sensor by the lens. However, the physical shutter prevents this light from actually hitting the sensor. While the shutter is open, in this animation for 3 seconds, the sensor gets 3 seconds of exposure. The exact same exposure could be achieved using finite light pulses. In this scenario, there is no ambient light. When the camera's shutter opens, no light hits the sensor, just as when the shutter was closed. Now, a pulse of light is emitted for 3 seconds. During this period, the sensor sees 3 seconds of light and yields the same exposure as the physical shutter scenario encountered previously. Eventually, the shutter closes, but its closing has no impact on the actual exposure. In both cases, the same exposure time is achieved through different methods. Freezing the motion of fast subjects requires very fast exposure times. These exposure times may not be possible to achieve using a mechanical shutter. However, strobes can easily pulse for very short time periods, on the order of tens of thousandths of a second. For this reason, strobes are often used for stopping extremely fast motion, like bullets. I wanted to use this technique to capture the splash of fruit falling into a wine glass. The key challenge here is firing the flash at just the right moment to capture the splash. The flash recycle time on my flash was too slow for burst mode, so I had to rely on a single shot per drop. My solution was to build a device that would fire the flash when it detected the sound of the fruit hitting the water. The circuit I created has a microphone that picks up ambient sound. The sound level is measured and amplified in the circuit and passed to an Arduino microcontroller. It uses program logic to decide whether or not to fire the flash. When it detects a sound, it electrically connects the leads on the flash sync port and the flash fires. This device was made using spare parts I had lying around within a few hours, so it's pretty clear from this and from these images that this was definitely a prototype and not a polished product. However, it worked pretty well regardless. So with all of this completed, I taped a plastic bag to the wall and started trying to take some photographs. I had a wired shutter release in my left hand, which I used to fire off 2.5 second exposures. Shortly after that, I would drop the fruit into the wine glass. When the device detected the sound of the splash, it would go ahead and fire the flash in order to expose the photograph for a very short period of time. Now, I actually found that I really liked the photographs more if I added a slight delay between the detection of the splash and actually firing the flash. I used a 45 millisecond delay, which I found just experimentally by trying lots of cases. The reason I like this delay is because it allowed the fruit to start falling away from the splash, which kind of separated out those elements. It also gave the time for the splash to develop and become more interesting, both within the glass and also coming out of the glass. I ended up taking quite a few photographs, probably on the order of hundreds, because it's a pretty random process about what your final shot actually ends up looking like. But there's quite a bit of diversity in how they came out, and I just picked the ones that I thought were most aesthetically appealing. These are 3 of my favorite right here. And so as I went along, I would try to adjust my technique by, varying it from simply dropping the fruit to throwing it in with as much power as I could to try to create more interesting splashes. I also, as I went along, I ended up adding this lime in order to add some additional color. Though the strawberry did have some green, it wasn't very prominent, and I was kind of interested in having a secondary color. But overall, I was pretty happy with how these turned out. I think it was worth the time investment, and it was pretty fun and got some cool shots out of the experiment. If you enjoyed this video, definitely check out my companion blog post, which you can find at danielwitten.com/blog. The blog post includes full-screen copies of some of the images in this video. If you like this video and want more, hit the subscribe button below and check out my blog for more content. If you have questions or feedback, I would love to hear from you in the comments.